You're listening to the Heal Yourself Radio podcast. Unleash the Doctor Within with your hosts, Dr. Jonathan Chung and Dr. Brian Tew.
Welcome to another episode of Heal Yourself Radio. I'm Dr. Jonathan Chung. And today for my guest, I have Mike Mutzel. He is the author of The Belly Fat Effect, and he is also an expert in functional medicine. He works with clients, and he also teaches healthcare practitioners and other professionals about the benefits of functional medicine to help make people and lead people to their health goals. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so before we go into some questions and answers, why don't you give the audience a little bit of background about who you are?
Yeah, sure. I would love to. Well, like you said, I've been kind of in the industry for a while. Functional medicine industry. Started out doing consulting for some of the professional lines, and still do that at some level. But wrote a book about it's been about a year and a half ago now, and that kind of stemmed from working with a medical doctor, integrative physician in Denver, Colorado. His name's Gerard Guillory, and this was back I started in 2008, and so. Started doing nutrition work with him. I wanted to go to med school and stuff like that, and I realized a lot of people are coming in on these medicines and getting procedures and weren't looking at diet and stress and sleep and all this stuff, and that I coming from fitness and having been a personal trainer and wanting to be a bodybuilder and stuff like that in high school and college, and I never did that or anything. But anyway, I thought man, don't people. I thought this was common sense, right? And so many people just were missing the links between just what I thought was just kind of basic information. So thought that people really need to. I just wanted to spread the message. So that's kind of what I've been doing and using online places like you mentioned, like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that to help spread the word. And it's really cool. The science gets more and more complicated, but it all points back to the same kind of core factors of sleep, stress reduction, eating real food, balancing gut bacteria and all that sort of stuff. We just have a deeper way of understanding the molecular mechanisms as to how those, very simple lifestyle hacks, if you will, can cause really profound changes in our biology. So that in a nutshell is what I'm about.
That's really awesome. And I've been following your Facebook page for a while, and you give out so much great free content just through your Facebook page. How do you make any money?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So through my consulting and stuff like that, that's how I it's funny. We can talk about business if you want. I know that's not the focus of this, but the more you give away, the more it comes back to you. So my email list is pretty big from that, But we have a lot of members we have at highintensityhealth.com, my blog. I have a membership side of things, and so we sell e-courses and cooking tutorials and videos, and then things of that sort. So the more it sounds counterintuitive. What I see a lot of people. If folks are listening and you're in the nutrition or fitness space where you're healthcare practitioners, a lot of people, the natural tendency is to hold everything tight to the chest and not share stuff, and that really hurts your exposure and your growth. So the more that you share, and again, I'm not saying, I'm famous or trying to be famous or anything like that, but the more you share, the more people then share, and it goes viral, and you start to create this whole reciprocity thing, and then people support you and listen to your podcast and buy your books, and so it's a great way. I just like giving stuff away for free because there's so much misinformation out there. We got to kind of overcompensate with all the good information.
Definitely. So let's get into some practical tips for people. What do you think is, and what's been your experience, what do you think is one of the biggest things that's really holding people back metabolically? I know that's something that you go heavily into your book, but what's one of the things that you see is the biggest thing that you thought was common sense, but most people are missing the boat on it?
Yeah, that's a great point. There's so many variables, but one thing I didn't really talk about in the book and is mindset. First of all, a lot of and self-image. And so if you look at any fitness model or bodybuilder that's been successful, they really visualize what they want their body to look like and and even any entrepreneur, business owner, an actor, anyone that's achieved success, they've kind of manifested in a sense. And I don't want to sound like, The Secret here or anything like that, but there's some truth to this. And there's a great book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And not that this is about money, but at first I like people to understand is your self-talk and, visualizing, what you want to look like, how you want the world to perceive you, and what your big goals and dreams are. That's, I think, step number one. I think a lot of people don't do that. They visualize themselves as being fat. They've always been fat, so they're going to be fat. Their family and friends and everyone is fat. And so that creates a real hurdle, even if they're eating well, balancing gut bacteria, exercising, and stuff like that. So I think that's step number one, and that's something I've learned from reading these old bodybuilding books from Lee Haney and some of the greats back in the 70s. Is every night these bodybuilders, and again, I'm not promoting bodybuilding, just using that as an example, would visualize like their muscles growing and stuff before bed and what they would look like. So there's a lot of truth to that. So that's what I recommend, number one. And then the kind of the bigger step, then the more tangible things, if you will. I think people not eating enough food, and this sounds really kind of counterintuitive, but a lot of people that I met with that were overweight, had diabetes, insulin resistance, all this metabolic dysfunction, they would skip breakfast, eat a muffin, for lunch and like some grapes, and have this big dinner. And I think that's I know that there's all this intermittent fasting buzz going on around the internet and carb backloading and all these different ways of doing things. But generally, and you look at the research, it really supports this as well. Breakfast eaters weigh less than non-breakfast eaters. Breakfast eaters have a more stronger release of these gut hormones, the incretin hormones. And again, I dive into all the science in the book and stuff like that. I have a lot of videos on YouTube on this. But, your GI tract releases a lot of hormones that suppress appetite, govern satiety, release insulin, affect fat burning at a huge level. So just by eating breakfast, and then not only eating breakfast, but chewing your food mindfully and being in a state of gratitude and things like that, not just like gobbling down huge chunks of food, can go a long way. So
Awesome.
That's big one.
For sure. You brought up some great books and resources, Think and Grow Rich, and some of those other old-time books that change your mindset. I think it's really one of the things that are most underappreciated because, in my opinion, one of the reasons that people get on this yo-yo cycle when it comes to weight loss is because they didn't change their brain first and they just kind of did the how instead of addressing the why they want to achieve the results they want to do, because when they have a powerful enough why, then the how is kind of take care of itself.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, anyone can buy healthy food. Anyone can buy a gym membership, but changing your thought process and how you view yourself, like that takes some deep work, and some people either don't know how to do it, don't want to do it, don't think that it's that powerful. But you talk to yourself 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365, right? I mean, we're all having internalized dialogue with ourselves. And if that self-talk is negative, or you perceive yourself to be overweight or poor or stupid or whatever, then you're going to manifest that. I mean, there's a whole field, psychoneuroimmunology. Thoughts become, it's matter, it's energy, and it affects your neuroendocrine system, meaning your brain, your hormones, and also your immune system. And so, the most powerful research, if people are like skeptical of what I'm saying, if you look at psychoneuroimmunology and cancer, and so thought processes and mind-body, spiritual, there's been a lot of research in this field in the context of cancer recovery. So, people that have strong social support, people that meditate, people that journal and visualize themselves healing, have a better recovery in the cancer process. And so this is true for weight loss. This is true for, making money. This is true for all these various things. And so again, it sounds basic and stuff like that, but it's really powerful. And there's so much nutrition information out there. I mean, and people spend $60 billion. I mean, just in America alone, $60 billion a year on supplements, personal trainers, weight loss programs, bariatric surgery. We spend more money than any country in the world, by an order of magnitude. Yet over 71% of all Americans, adults at least, are overweight or obese, right? So, I think all these factors like we're talking about, from the biomedical, if you will, the eating properly, meal timing, exercise, all that is huge. However, the mindset part is equally, or in my opinion, more important than that.
Definitely. So in regards to things like weight loss and navigating this multi-billion-dollar industry of diet, how do people develop the filters to know what is hype and what is real and based in fact and science?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think the thing is, people need to become their own, they need to do the research for themselves. The barrier to entry to accessing scientific information is really been lowered. And so, people have probably heard PubMed. You just do Google, ncbi.gov, or go PubMed into Google, and it will pull it up. And you can find these articles that folks are, quote unquote, experts are referencing. Any expert, if you want to call them that, on a summit or that have written a book, they're mixing a bit of research with their own personal and or clinical experience, right? And so you can at least cover the research side in maybe 10 minutes a day. For example, if someone wants to learn more about the gut microbiome and obesity, you can just go into PubMed and type in gut bacteria and obesity and see some of the studies and just read the abstract and kind of start to figure out some of the terminology. If I'm sure people that are listening do that with their finances, with their 401k, with life insurance. You're comparing different plans and packages with mortgage insurance if you own a home. If you're going to buy a home, you're kind of trying to get the best interest rates. So you're learning about interest rates. The internet has really lowered the barrier to entry for pretty much all fields and specialties and industries. So I think it's good for people. Find credible folks, on the web. There's many of them, podcasts like yourselves. And then also to take that next step and just to go into the research periodically. If something sounds too good to be true or a little fishy, just spend 5 or 7 minutes and try and come up with an article that you can read yourself and try and discern it and interpret it and share that with someone else.
For sure. And as far as some of the things you mentioned before, they're becoming a little bit more hot topics right now, especially if you're following, fitness and diet industry. Things like intermittent fasting, carb backloading, even something like nutritional ketosis. What are your thoughts on some of these, and do you think that there's one is better than the other, or do you think they all have some merit?
Yeah, I think they all have some merit, and I'll just kind of preface, this whole next part of this conversation with the thought process that, when we eat food, it's nourishment in the sense that, in the same fashion that we fill up our cars with gasoline. And so if you're not going to be going on a long road trip, you don't need a full gas tank. You know what I'm saying? And so if you live your life, I should say, in a more adaptive, present mindset and think, okay, what am I going to be doing today? Am I sitting on my butt doing a lot of work? Am I going to be doing exercise? Am I going to be, doing a lot of yard work, housework, whatever? And I think eat for that day and the activities involved in that day. And that can include mental activities as well. And that's where we can get into ketone bodies and nutritional ketosis. I think is absolutely, I stay keto adapted pretty much all the time. That doesn't mean I don't eat carbs. I just try and eat more, higher fat, a lot of vegetables and moderate protein and minimal carbs. But again, pre and post workout, I do have carbohydrates, for example. And on days that I don't work out or I'm relatively inactive or, the only exercise I'm doing, for example, like today is kind of a rest day. I'll do some gardening and stuff like that. But I'm not going to eat a lot of carbohydrates. Keep the fat high, keep the protein moderate. But tomorrow I'm going to do leg days, for example. And so that would involve heavy leg press, heavy squat, lunges, sprints. A lot of anaerobic activity. So I'm going to have some carbs, particularly a little bit before, and definitely after to replenish glycogen stores. So there's a lot of benefits to all these diets. But I think, people need to start, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to do this diet, carb backloading. Okay, well, on days that you're not exercising, if you're doing all this carb backloading, you're probably going to store fat. That's the thing about
Sure.
that is. And so For example, carb backloading really works well for people that are doing a lot of anaerobic resistance training because they have a lot of skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle, can store a lot of glycogen. A lot of glycogen. Glycogen is the store for folks that are like, what's that? Glycogen is stored carbohydrate. Okay, so when you ingest carbohydrates, they can be converted to fat or stored as glycogen, or they can become used. So when you're exercising and you eat a banana, that carbohydrate that is released is most likely going to be used to make cellular energy called ATP. But if you eat a banana before you go to bed, okay, and your glycogen stores in your muscles are full, your glycogen stores in your liver are full, well, that carbohydrate from the banana is going to make fat tissue. So that's how carbs can make you fat. So I think it's really important to look at all these diets and look at your activity level. And then also be realistic, how much muscle mass do you have, and how metabolically healthy if you are. The more metabolically unhealthy you are, the less carbohydrates you can tolerate, okay, because that's where carbohydrates generally go. So I think, again, I hate to be so general here, but people need to just look at and really individualize this and look at this under the canvas of their activity level, and then appropriately kind of tinker and test, and then also use a glucometer. The more that we can measure things, the better our lifestyle choices are. So you can go on Amazon or go to any drugstore in America and buy a glucometer, start testing your blood glucose levels. If they're running high, then you're metabolically inflexible. You need to eat more fat, vegetables, and protein, not more carbs.
For sure. And speaking on some resources for people, like you mentioned, a glucometer is something that someone should have, especially if they're worried about metabolic dysfunction. What are some other things that you feel like people should be regularly measuring, just for the average human being, and what tools do you use to measure these things?
Yeah, great question. I think that's where this whole thing is going. I'll just preface this next part with biometric devices and various feedback, gizmos. I mean, from the Apple Watch to heart rate monitors, heart rate variability are an amazing way to track things. I mean, imagine if you were earning money and you had no idea how much money you were earning or where it went. I mean, you would just keep spending money and whatever. I mean, it would be silly. So we track our finances very well, our 401k, our savings, our retirement. Like, people know where all their money is going, but we need to do that same thing with our health, because once you start tracking things, you can realize, like, oh my gosh, maybe drinking that bottle of wine last night was not a good idea. My fasting sugar's 95, right? So I recommend, like you mentioned, glucometer. One that also measures ketones is called the Precision Extra, so that's a really great device. I like looking at blood pressure. So I do blood pressure, twice a day before. You can get this device. I can't remember what it's called. It's on Amazon. It's got the top reviews. It had like 350 reviews on Amazon. It's like $65. So blood pressure in the morning and at night. Heart rate variability is key. So this is, you can use a Muse, M-U-S-E. Muse is a neurofeedback device. It looks at quantitative EEG, which is a brain wave. So it really looks at your stress response, your real-time stress response, which is great. Heart rate variability, it's called Heart Math. It's a great device. It's $99. You can go to learnheartmath.com, check that out. So those are the devices that I recommend checking out, because they give you a nice snapshot of your stress response, your ability to get into a calm state, and also your overall metabolic response. That's awesome.
Definitely I'll put all of those resources in the show notes. You can go to healyourselfradio.com and you can check out everything that Mike just discussed right there. I know a couple of things that it seems like you're pretty hot on right now are the gut microbiome and ketosis. Can you go into a little bit about the importance of those two things right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. The microbiome is huge. It's, this forgotten organ. Most doctors that attended medical school before 2012 were not even taught about, this organ that's more metabolically active than our liver, weighs more than our brain, outnumbers the number of cells we have in our body 10 to 1, and our genome 100 to 1. So it's very active, and every single thing that you eat, comes in contact with this huge organ. So it's very critical. basically the way, there's all kinds of science you can get into, and I've interviewed a lot of the various experts on my podcast and stuff like that. But in short, the way that you keep your microbiome active and diverse is by eating fiber and phytonutrients. So anything with color, anything with fiber, very beneficial. There's the American Gut Project is a really cool way that you can get your stool tested and see your diversity and see how things affect you. Jeff Leach is running that. He's the author of Rewild and Honor Thy Symbionts, which are two great books on Amazon. So the microbiome is where the science is going. I mean, the effectiveness, for example, of chemotherapeutic drugs is contingent upon, what your composition of your microbiome is, for example. And so we're learning so much more and really rethinking pharmacology and medicine and health in general now that we better understand the microbiome. So it's a big aspect in nutritional ketosis. I mean, we can go on and on about that, but the ketone bodies are an amazing, when you eat a high-fat diet, your body kind of makes these fatty molecules called ketones, and they're burned very efficiently in the mitochondria where you burn fat. And so these ketones affect the way that your genes are read. They turn on mitochondrial biogenesis. They do a lot of things. So I think high-fat diets are a great way to go.
Awesome. You just spoke about something that talked about cancer patients' recovery and how it's related to the microbiome. I actually just read a recent paper. It talked about how vagal tone can affect and predict cancer recovery regardless of the stage of cancer. Did you have a chance to read that paper?
I haven't read that, but there's a whole body of research. I mean, vagal tone predicts mortality in general. So, and when we're talking about the vagal tone, just so folks understand that's kind of the parasympathetic branch of our nervous systems. When we're in that calm, rest and digest, this is, the side, the kind of the mental state we ought to be in majority of the time. But, when you brought it up, independent risk of mortality, meaning low vagal tone, individuals that have a heart attack, it will predict whether or not that they will eventually die in a shorter period of time versus those that have a higher vagal tone. And so there's a lot of great research there, and haven't seen that one on cancer recovery, but it goes back again to mindset, like we kind of introduced this. That whole mind-body connection is so critical. And so if you're thinking negative thoughts and emotions and having a lot of stress, those signals are being transduced through your metabolic and immune systems and can affect your whole physiology, and in the context of cancer, your survival rate, which is pretty important.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I'll send you a link to that paper because I think you'll find it pretty fascinating. And it's also something that you could measure your vagal tone just through that HeartMath tool with measuring your heart rate variability. So it's something that people can be empowered to measure on their own. Right.
That's a great point.
So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about things that you do for your own health. What are some resources that you like to give people as gifts and say this could make a big impact on your life, it could change your life?
Gosh, resources. I don't really have one resource. If I was to give like an elevator speech to someone, I would just say you just got to move more and get a gym membership, and move your muscles. And so that's one thing that I like to encourage people to do is just the kind of stress the importance of resistance training, not so much endurance training. I think is a great tip. A lot of people think that just going on long bike rides and runs all the time is really healthy, and I don't think that's the way to go, and the research supports that. So that would be kind of my resource, if you will. I know that doesn't directly answer your question, but that's what I would say. Resistance training is king.
Nice. Do you have a particular workout style, high intensity, or any type of specific workout plan that you endorse or you like to use for yourself?
I do a kind of a mixture, a hybrid type model. I've done CrossFit before. I know that's really popular, and I think for a good reason. It's full body exercise. It's explosive. You're incorporating large muscle groups. So I think that's the key. You don't have to do CrossFit necessarily. I think it's great for newbies in a sense, as long as you don't injure yourself and overdo things. But to learn the squat, to learn the deadlift, and some of these Olympic lifts and exercises that have built or help maintain great physiques, since the inception of, fitness and bodybuilding and powerlifting. So, anything that you're going to involve and incorporate multiple muscle groups, like the deadlift, legs and low back and upper back, and the squat, you activate over 200 muscles in your body. That's going to fire up all these metabolic processes that help you burn fat and prevent cancer and offset metabolic disease. So that's my thing, is just the more full body exercises you can do, the better. Overhead standing military presses. Don't just go to the gym and do the arm curls and bench press. I mean, that's not really going to get you to where you need to be long term in terms of health.
Awesome. What's something that you feel like people don't know enough about that you do on a daily basis? So is there a routine that you do that not nearly enough people know about yet?
Yeah, I would say moving your core. I mean, a lot of people focus on core movements for like getting abs and stuff like that. But I like to move my core and do various like deep abdominal exercises and movements and breathing exercises, because it reduces the hypoxia around the fat tissue. And so basically fat can become devoid of oxygen, and then it triggers all these inflammatory switches that ultimately lead to things like we've been talking about, cancer and diabetes and obesity. So it's very important to do things like Pilates and planks and sit-ups and deep belly, like yoga, like prana breaths and things of that sort, to constantly get blood flow to your core, because that movement will also prevent GI adhesions and things. I mean, if you look at gastroenterologists, and I mean, if you think about just like sitting for 8 hours, your GI tract's all compressed and it's got all this mucus and collagen and all this stuff, and you can create adhesions that affect blood flow, that affect motility of your gut, and can cause stagnation. So I'm a big fan of starting the day off with deep belly breaths and sit-ups and core, not so much to have a six-pack. I don't really care about that, although that is easy to do if you eat real food and stuff. But that is that's a side effect, right, of just having good overall gut health and reducing belly fat. I think is really under-recognized.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on supplementation?
Yeah, I think supplements are key. I mean, we eat a lot of real food. Bone broth that's been cooking for 72 hours in the kitchen right now and stuff like that. But look, we're all exposed to billions of pounds of chemicals that are new to nature. We've never seen before. These chemicals, glyphosate, the pesticide, herbicide is being found in rainwater throughout the U.S., and that's very toxic to our body. So, if you lived on a pristine, paradise part of the world that had never been exposed to synthetic chemicals or Wi-Fi or anything, you probably wouldn't need supplements, but most of us haven't done that. So I like to take, probiotics daily, omega-3 fats that are enteric-coated. I like, coconut oil and MCT oil supplementing to kind of kickstart the ketosis process. I go back and forth between whey protein and pea protein, and then various phytonutrients from like curcumin, standardize the BCM95 material is really great. Then I also do sulforaphane and, sleep support, myo-inositol, amino acids. So there's probably maybe, a dozen or so things that I personally take daily, recommend it, and notice a huge difference if I don't take it. So. Okay.
So navigating supplements can be a challenge. Do you have any brands that you recommend over others?
Yeah, I mean, I like Zymogen. Again, take this with a grain of salt. I do consulting for them, but that said, I would still recommend them if that was not the case. And I say that because I've been to their facility, had seen what they do, and a lot of their raw materials come from Europe and European suppliers. They're the only company that I know of in the world that has a humidity-controlled manufacturing facility. I mean, it's got every bell and whistle and TGF and NSF and FDA CGMP, so all these different third-party certificates. So that's what I suggest. It's really tempting to just go on Amazon and order stuff, but there's a lot of fake supplements out there. Supplements is a huge business. As we mentioned, $60 billion just in fat loss supplements alone. That doesn't include all the supplements annually. So you really got to trust your manufacturer, and then not only that, like who you're getting it from. You want to get it, just like when it comes to food. You don't want to buy food that's been distributed and shipped and stuck in a warehouse and all that. You want to buy it from the farmer, right, at your farmer's market, or right from your organic grass-fed cattle rancher. Buy it in bulk. And so that's why I like to know who my farmer is, and I like to know who makes my supplements. And so I know, again, folks, you probably order from discount websites and Amazon, but you never know what you're getting when it comes to that. So just do your own homework and research and vet your supplement company. But quite frankly, there's only a few good ones out there, and so that's what it becomes kind of challenging.
Awesome. Well, you've given us a ton of great information. I feel like I could talk to you for an hour longer if we wanted to, but what's a way that people can, find some of your great content and find out more about you?
Yeah, Dr. Chung, thank you so much for the opportunity. And, like you said, I'm pretty active on Facebook and Instagram. So if you just type in Mike Mutzel, you'll see my business page on Facebook and Instagram as well. And then I have a YouTube channel and blog. It's called High Intensity Health. So just go to highintensityhealth.com, and we got a lot of videos, and we got an upcoming summit going on right now, the Autism Intensive. So for parents that want to learn how to have healthier kids, they can check that out for free, the autismintensive.com. And then you mentioned the book Belly Fat Effect is on Amazon and in Barnes & Noble and on the Kindle format as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Mike. I'll have to keep in touch with you and see what other projects you have going on, and love to get you on again to discuss anything new that you're working on.
Sounds great. Really appreciate the opportunity.
All right, and for all of our listeners, I know Mike threw a lot of resources out to you guys today, so you can find the links to all these resources at healyourselfradio.com.
Thanks for listening to Heal Yourself Radio. If you like what you hear, show us some love on iTunes by writing a review or by sharing with your friends. We love interacting with our listeners. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/healyourselfradio. You can find me on Twitter at Dr. Jonathan Chung. And you could always come to our website at healyourselfradio.com and interacting with us in the comments section. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week.